First of all, let me thank everyone here for the opportunity to speak to you for a few minutes. I'm Steve Lucas. I am the CEO of Marketo. Oh, it's over there. And now at Adobe, working for the brilliant Shantanu Narayan, who runs Adobe. And I want to tell you a little bit of a story in just a moment about how we got there. But my topic today is all about experience. And I want to share with you how I believe experience is the driver for the next generation of technology, the next generation of high-growth companies, that experience in and of itself is what will ultimately drive success for every single person in this room and the companies and the customers that you serve. But I want to share with you just a brief story. I was brought into Marketo in 2016 into a company, and if you're unfamiliar with Marketo, it's a marketing automation technology, or what we called an engagement platform that drives omni-channel communication and engagement digitally and physically with all of your customers. And I was brought into an organization that was going through, let's just call it a high state of change in 2016. Bookings were flat, revenue was stagnant, turnover was very high. The company was just taken private, and I was asked to take that company and to focus on growing in the enterprise and really help turn it around. The good news is that it had incredible product and market fit. The challenge is that we had no enterprise sales force, and we had lost all of our selling momentum. We needed to bring new innovation to the company. We needed to focus on acquiring new customers. And oh, by the way, we had a somewhat impatient / patient, depending on the day, investor, Invista Equity Partners, that wanted us to drive extraordinary growth and transformation. Fast forward exactly 24 months to the day after I joined Marketo, we had tripled the value of the company. It went from $1.6 billion to Adobe acquiring the company for $4.75 billion. We took the growth from negative to north of 30% in 24 months. We turned our turnover around and had one of the best retention rates in tech. And that's the kind of story that, by the way, was driven entirely by experience. Now, the next piece of experience that I'll give you is this. The reality is that every single one of us, we go through life and we are shaped by experience. Now, you may not know this, but I'm type 1 diabetic. It's one of my life experiences. I am who I am today because 26 years ago I was diagnosed with something I didn't understand, and I was really scared when I was diagnosed with it. I didn't know if I would live to be 40 or 50 or 60. I didn't know. I'm not 50 yet, just to be clear, but story turns out really good so far. It was scary. But at the time when I was diagnosed, what I thought was a curse. My biggest weakness has turned out to be my biggest strength. My ability to overcome that challenge has turned me into who I am today. It shaped my reality. And for every single person in this room, we've gone through something like that, or you're going through something like that right now. Our experiences shape who we are. And it's not just life experiences. It's also technology experiences that shape who we are. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Because we're in this crazy, incredible world where technology is accelerating at an exponential rate. The reality is that ubiquitous connectivity, this whole fifth wave of computing, the transformation of the app economy that we've kind of gone through, and it's almost passé to even say that. The reality is that all of these things are not slowing down, they're just accelerating. And it's our job as inventors, as entrepreneurs, as intrapreneurs, as CEOs, as executives, to find ways to ride those waves, the waves of transformation. We have to be able to read those waves equally well. And Adobe, as a company, has a singular mission, and that is to change the world through digital experiences. That's our job. We believe firmly that experience drives loyalty. Experience is what changes people's perceptions. Experience through, yes, technology, but also life, is what ultimately will dictate who wins and who loses. And this mission has been Adobe's North Star for a long, long time, since our founding, since the founding of the company nearly 4 decades ago, but it is relevant, or as relevant now as it was then. And you know, for me, as I think about this notion of experience, I often reflect back on a movie that came out 20 years ago this year. That movie is The Matrix. If you have not seen it, I recommend you do. It's pretty good. In The Matrix, the protagonist Neo was presented with a choice. And that choice was he could take the blue pill and continue about his life. Tomorrow he'll wake up and nothing has changed. And I kind of use that analogy for how we're running our businesses today. The enterprise systems that we're using, the way that we think about delivering value to our customers. We have a CRM system. Why? Because we're told we need a CRM system. We have HR. We have ERP. We have these systems because we believe we need them. And I'm not saying you don't. By the way, don't go cancel your contract yet until we get to the end of the presentation. But the reality is that these systems dictate to us what our customers will experience. If you don't think that your CRM system affects how your customers experience your business, you are wrong. If you don't think that ERP has an impact on your customers, you're wrong. The reality is every single enterprise system that we choose, that we carefully curate, that we implement, has profound impact on how our customers experience our businesses. We choose systems before we choose the experience. And then what we find is that once we've chosen the systems dictate the experience. That's the blue pill. The red pill is something different. This is where we can choose to put experience first. We can decide at every moment what experience we want our customers to have. How do we want them to feel and experience our brand? How do we want them to understand how we serve them? How do we want them to love what we do for them? And this is the red pill. So we're going to take this red pill today and quickly go down the rabbit hole because I believe experience unequivocally changes everything. Now think about this for a moment. We've got two experiences here. We've got Uber on the left hand and Airbnb on the right hand. Think about this. 10 years ago when Uber did not exist, if you got into a stranger's car, that would be weird. In fact, you might get beat up. But someone came along and created an application and a network, and it's totally normal to just jump in the back of a random stranger's car. So we've gone from riding in strangers' cars to Uber being a utility. In fact, if we show up in a city and there's no Uber available, what's the first thing we do? We kind of bristle and fumble. What do you mean there's no, I have to take a taxi? What is this medieval town that I have arrived in? It's called Austin, by the way. They just turned on Uber. So the reality is, you have these challenges, but we have these expectations. Why? Because of an experience. So we've literally gone from riding in strangers' cars to a utility. It's like the power. It has to be there or we have panic attacks. Now think about Airbnb. 10 years ago, before Airbnb existed, it's called breaking and entering. You're walking into some stranger's home and sleeping in their bed. But now, because we have an app, that's totally fine. Again, it's the experience. Think about it. Just a simple application and a network has changed how we perceive reality. It's changed everything. And these are just two analogs of how the world will be 10 years from now, where everything, the things that seem awkward today, will be perfectly normal 10 years from now. Now, that's no excuse to go do something awkward today and say, don't worry, wait 10 years, this will be fine. But the reality is that these are perfect analogs of how experience changes everything. Think about this for a minute. When's the last time you saw an ad for Airbnb or Uber? Never. I'm sure you could probably find one somewhere, but never. Why? Because the marketing is the experience. It is found in the personal comprehension in the app of who you are, where you go, what you like to eat, what you prefer, where you've been, where you might want to go, the type of ride, if you want to roll in style or you're like, hey, throw me in a Prius. It doesn't matter. The marketing is the personalization. It is in the app. It is not this abstract thing that we spend extra money on and we scratch our heads as to whether or not we're getting return. Marketing is the experience, and experience is the marketing. And similarly with Airbnb, and we know this to be true, and this is fundamentally transforming how we market. Because there is one immutable truth, and I put this in a book I wrote called Engage to Win, and that is no one wants to be marketed to. No one. but everyone wants to be engaged with. When you woke up this morning, were you excited to see that email that had the 10% off of some mattress you don't need sale? Of course not. No one gets up and goes, oh, I hope my inbox is full of spam. But we do love to be engaged. When people ask us our opinion, we're happy to share it. That's the beauty of human-to-human engagement or digital engagement, and experience truly changes that. And let's think about experience a little bit more. Let's dig a little bit deeper, because the line between epic, something like an Uber or an Airbnb is a case in point. Epic experiences, something like that, is profoundly thin, the line between those, and epic failure. And we'll take an example here, which is Coachella on the left hand and Fire Festival on the right. So if you're unfamiliar with Fire Festival, Google it. It'll take about 12 seconds to figure out what went down. Coachella is world-renowned. It is an absolute crazy fest of fun. It's kind of like an annualized Woodstock on a recurring basis. And every year, things get bigger, like giant inflatable spacemen, for example, that they have to have. The talent is bigger. The talent is always better. The performances are amazing. And they work at it tirelessly because they know people come for the experience. That's why they're there. And if you look at Fire Festival, who came up with an orange square and a bunch of celebrity endorsements, they thought that they could replicate that experience, in fact, exceed it. And they failed. Now, there might have been a little fraud involved too, who knows? Watch the thing on Netflix, definitely fraud. But the point is that experience is something that is not instant, it is earned time and time and time again, which draws us to one simple conclusion for me. Whether you're building a Netflix or an Uber or an Airbnb where you have these epic experiences, the reality is that we must make every experience epic, because you are not competing against your competition. You are competing against the immediacy of Uber, the convenience of Airbnb, the speed of Google. Those are the things that you are competing against, and we all know this to be true. The world that we live in, it is not about your competition to the right or left of you. It is the aggregate consumer conception or perception of what you should be delivering to them every single moment of the day. That is experience. And that is why, as leaders, we have to be myopically focused on this. You have to be ruthless in looking at every single experience. Is your website epic? Is this email that you're pushing to a customer epic? Is your event epic? Is your message epic? That's a pretty high bar, I get it. But if we don't look with that level of intensity, then we will not deliver anything remotely close to it. And that is what we will live and die by in the world that we are in today. This is why the call to make every experience epic is more important now than ever before. And you can ask yourself a simple question. When you go back to work today, are you having epic experiences? When you fire up that HR system and you're like, sweet mother, do I really have to go approve this thing? That is the opposite of an epic experience. But how could it be epic? And there's opportunities to do that. And I'm going to share a few of those things with you today. But we start with one simple rule. And that is, at all times, engage. Engage with your employees, your customers, and your partners. Think about this for a moment. Your strongest brand advocates, without a doubt, are your employees. How often are your employees tweeting? How often are your employees talking to customers? We'll come back to that in just a minute. But this tool called engagement is an incredible lever. And yes, it is a lever, I believe, long enough to move the world. And we'll talk about that in detail. But there is this massive experience gap that we have to overcome. As we expect, all of us think, well, my experience is pretty good. I mean, that person over there, theirs is crappy, but mine's good. The company that I work for, we deliver a good or great experience. Most companies today believe, and there's plenty of statistics, I won't bore you with them, that back that up. Most people, when you ask them, does your company deliver a good or great experience? They go, oh yeah, absolutely. But if you go and you ask the very customers that they serve, less than half of them today, again, statistically proven, say, nope, they do not. I have no loyalty whatsoever, the experience is terrible. So there's this huge gap, there's this disconnect, this dissonance that we have to overcome. How do we overcome that? Well, we bridge this gap through 4 key methods. First and foremost is, yes, getting the right systems. Now, I know I was just bagging on systems. I threw a little shade that way just a minute. We'll come back to it. But the reality is that if you don't have an experienced system, that drives experience independent of what CRM and ERP and HR and blah, blah, blah you have, then you're missing a key and critical component of your enterprise construct or architecture within your systems. Then of course you need the processes to manage and measure this on a daily basis. Unequivocally, you need the right people to execute, and absolutely, you need the right customer-obsessed culture. And this is how you bridge the experience gap. And on the system front, this is why Adobe created what we call the Experience Cloud. Now, this is something that Shantanu Narayan has been driving for the better part of a decade, is the Experience Cloud. It is an enterprise system end-to-end that drives, shapes, and creates experience for customers and employees and partners, independent of the enterprise systems that you have. It drives marketing and commerce. It drives analytics and ads and all of the things that touch people, that impact them, but it does it in a completely cohesive fashion. That's the system. Then, of course, you need the process. And what's profound about what happened at Adobe is Shantanu Narayan drove a transformation over a little bit, circa 7-year period, a little bit more, that transformed a company that was worth $10 billion to a company today that is worth nearly $140 billion. Or probably, well, it depends on the whole China trade war thing. I don't know, maybe $120 billion today. We'll have to go check. But a lot. That success was driven by what Shantanu and would refer to, and we refer to at Adobe as a data-driven operating model. And this DDOM model, this is religion for us at Adobe. This is how we constantly touch and understand what is your experience, not today, but this very second, and how can we make it better. That's a powerful model for change. Third is unequivocally people. We have to find the right people. We need people that are accountable, empathetic, positive, humble. I love humble and hungry people. I will trade someone that's an 8 out of 10 on the IQ scale, but they're more humble and they're more hungry than someone that's 10 out of 10 and they know it any day of the week. Because I have never considered myself to be the smartest person in the room, but there is one immutable fact that I know about myself and the people that work for me is we will outwork anyone. And I choose that any day. That's the power of people. And if you think about this notion of people, it really starts from the top. One rule that I have is be accessible. We live in a world where too many CEOs self-elevate. They want to rewrite their story. They were never born. They came down from a mountain on a unicorn. And then they met with the Dalai Lama and then they came up with their solution. It's like, none of that ever happened. Ever. But they rewrite it. The reality is that yes, we were all born, and we all grew up with challenges. I'm the second of 8 kids. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina in the deep, deep South. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not. I'm supposed to be like digging a hole somewhere in North Carolina. But because my father invested in me, he taught me how to program in Fortran. Some dads teach their kids like football or basketball, like I was programming in Fortran as a kid. That's weird. But that sparked a love of technology in me. And my father is a nuclear physicist, by the way. I did not follow in the family business. You don't want me near a nuclear power plant. I would just try and sell software to it. But the reality is that it's the people that make a difference. And finally, it is unequivocally the culture. We must all develop a customer-obsessed culture. And you can say, well, Steve, it's easy for you to say, like, customer-obsessed culture, got it, but what does it even mean? Another business practice that I firmly believe in, and every single person can take this home and start this tomorrow, is how many of your employees touch a customer? And I'm not talking about through some system, but actually talk to a customer every day. One of the most powerful things that you can do is make one simple rule. Everyone talks to a customer every day. Now, you're probably thinking, there's no way I want my engineers talking to a customer every day. Yes, you do. Whether that's through email or text, even if it's a note to say thank you. Think about the power you could unleash through 1,000 or 5,000 or 250 or 10,000 or 100,000 people every day saying thank you. That is truly transformative and extraordinary. That's the beginning of a customer-obsessed culture. And that's something that you can do every single day. But where I will finish is where I began. Making every experience epic. Now, we've spoken a lot today about how experiences shape our lives. They do. We are who we are because of the collection of our lives' experiences. And I love that. That's why I love learning about people and understanding what you've gone through, what your journey is, because it always helps me understand, why you are the epic person that you are. So we know that experience changes or shapes everything. But we also know that experience cannot be an afterthought. It has to be at the forefront of our strategy. It must be tip of the spear, not something that comes after we buy the systems, not something that we get after we hire the consultants. It is the tip of the spear in the battle for relevance. If you are not focused on experience 24/7, second by second, I promise you, you will not win. It does not matter what endeavor you have undertaken. So we know that to be true. What's really important is that we have the systems, the processes, the people, and the culture to back it up. It can't just be empty words. Let's go make an epic experience. You can't do that unless the entire company's energy is behind that every second of the day. So implementing the right systems, the right processes, the right people, and the right culture to drive that level of success will change your outcome. It will literally change the very destiny of you and your organization. And finally, coming back to this core principle of making every experience epic. This conference here today, I hope you take the opportunity every time you engage with someone today and this week to make it an epic experience. Make it engaging. Lean in. Find out about people's stories and what drives them. And then when you go back to work, whatever it may be, today, tomorrow, later in the week, take that steely eye of concentration and evaluation and look at everything you touch and ask yourself, is this epic? And if it's not, what could it be? Because there's one thing that I believe in life more than anything else. And that is, let's spend our time identifying what we believe to be impossible. And let's go make it possible. And we can do that if we just summon the will, because summoning the will takes that impossibility and makes it an inevitability. And that is something I have lived by moment in my life. I value it, I love it, and I will continue to focus on making every experience epic. I thank you for your time today. Thank you very much.